Leslie Stahl seems to take seriously the matter of being a serious investigative journalist, something she has now been for decades. So it was unsurprising to see her take her recent interview with Donald Trump as an opportunity to do her job in a serious way. Trump being Trump, which is equivalent to saying a serial gaslighting liar, was never going to enjoy being questioned in a serious way. In his worldview, interviews are supposed to be in the bubble, softball question sessions designed to flatter and uplift him. Leslie was having none of that, and so predictably it got kind of contentious until he finally couldn't take it anymore, and he pulled himself away so he could go and whine on TV and social media about how unfair all of this media scrutiny is. Stahl has been at this since joining CBS in 1972, and she is known to be ambitious, hardworking, and hard-nosed. She has done lots of political campaign and White House coverage, and since joining the 60 Minutes team almost 30 years ago, she is known as a bulldog that has not only survived, but actually thrived mightily in a tough working environment. In other words, everything Trump pretends to admire, but actually absolutely hates, particularly if it's a woman. Now, in that sense, this interview represents yet another example of monumental Trump idiocy. This guy doesn't just spend all day trying to convince his followers about alternative realities, he actually lives in them himself. He is as delusional as they make him. Why would he think the interview would turn out in any other way than bad for him? When you look at Leslie's chart, it's easy to see the hard work and ambition in a Saturn-Moon opposition. If these two planets are opposed, you either work hard at it or you feel guilty and depressed, and it seems like she has definitely chosen the first option. With Uranus in the mix, she will think for herself, go her own way, and tell you to take a hike if you disingenuously challenge what she knows to be true. Pluto opposite Venus brings in high intensity and the willingness to go deep into anything, and the sextile trine to Eris means she releases the tension through the embodiment of the female warrior, telling it like it is. Mars in Aries, trining her Sun Mercury in the same house, serves to superemphasize that point. Notice the classic signs of investigative journalism. Sun in Sagittarius, an information publishing sign, in the third house of fact-gathering and information, while the Sun itself is ruled by Jupiter in the ninth house of information publishing, and in Gemini, the sign of the nuts and bolts of information itself. This is as precise as it gets. Then, a Scorpio moon with a Saturn load, together with a Pluto-Venus opposition to encourage digging below the surface. And the whole time, with Libra rising so she can at least pretend to start out friendly and relational. In other words, just by looking at the patterns in her chart, a perfect trap for the Orange Menace. But if you look at what her planets do in this chart, the theme is only further emphasized. The Moon to Saturn, Uranus opposition and square to his Mars, that's what I call digging where he doesn't like, and the fastest conduit to irritating his male macho Mars ego. And yet, those 10th house planets force him into grudging respect. He can't win this one. Her Venus opposing his Pluto, he wants to dominate and control her, which is a total waste of time and effort. Her 7th house, this is how I relate to you, Mars, in Aries, opposing his big bag of wind Jupiter exaggerations and self-aggrandizing statements, and her Sun Mercury to Jupiter opposition, wired into his full moon, so she can tune into where he's coming from despite all his efforts to BS his way through everything. In summary, it was a truly dumb idea for Trump to get into it with Leslie, but of course, on the one hand, he thinks he can talk his way out of anything, but since he seldom tangles with those who will call him out, he's always out of practice, so that didn't work out. And on the other, he is so far behind Biden, he probably figured he had no choice but put himself out there, which he did, and so America witnessed the delicious pummeling he took from a woman who was obviously well prepared to dish it out. Speaking of women giving Don the Con the beatings he so richly deserves, this is a topic I will be exploring in more detail as it relates to the transiting Eris in his chart. What he is facing on that account over the next decade isn't going to be pretty.